I'll see you guys in the dark.
So this happened when I was 11 years old and in the 6th grade. One day I was on my 6th period, which is gym, and we do laps. Then we get to the end and we make a turn. Then there is this big fence. And then when I was running, I saw a 30-year-old guy waving with a wired grin, who I can't tell who he was waving at, so I just kept running. Gym was over, so I packed up, getting ready to leave for home when I was going to the gate in front. And when I exit, I saw the same guy. He was staring in my direction, but he was not grinning. He was smiling now. So I started to speed walk because I was getting scared. After I got far from my school, I turned back and did not see him, so I was relieved. When I was walking home, a blue car pulled up to me and rolled its windows down a little bit. I couldn't see a face at all. All I heard was a voice. And the voice said, "You look like a nice kid, and smart." I smiled and said thank you. Then he said my full name. I was shocked. Then asked him how he knew my name. He rolled the window down all the way, and it was the same guy with the creepy smile that I ran into earlier. I started to run. I turned back, and his car was there. I was only 5 minutes away from home, so I kept on running. And after I made it to my house, I was sweating. My hands were shaking. I went inside, locked all the doors and windows, and slept in my bed. When I woke up, I went to see what time it was. It was 11:32 p.m. I was thirsty, so I wanted to get water. I hopped out of bed to the fridge to get some cold water. I heard a knock, so I went to see who it was. I looked outside the window, and what I saw shocked me. It was the same smiling guy, but with an item in his hand that I could not see because the outside lights were off. I felt like I was going to faint. I ran to my mom and dad's room to try and open it. It was locked, so I banged as loud as I could. They got mad at me for waking them up in the middle of the night. I told them that there was a creepy guy outside our house. So my dad went to go check it out, and I decided to stay with my mom. My dad saw nothing, but he heard a sound, so he went with me and my mom. Then I heard a scream. My mom called the police. When the police arrived, my dad was holding down the man. He had a kitchen knife and was trying to break my window. The police arrested him, took him in. After about 2 days, the police gave information to my dad on what happened. So my dad told me that the guy was stalking me every time I walked home from school, and also watched me in my window. I tried to tell my friends, but they don't trust me. I'm only 14 years old now. And I wonder what would have happened if I kept sleeping and did not tell my dad about this guy who tried to break in my window. My friend always tells me that I have an unusual knack for attracting weirdos, and this is always the first story that gets brought up when we talk about it. So I thought I'd share my experience with this guy from when I was back in secondary school. I'm in my final year of university now, and this guy still haunts me sometimes. When I was in secondary school, around 6 years ago now, I was friends with a group that constantly added more and more people into it. It was a good way to get to know more people from other schools, and generally these people were quite nice and never invited creeps. One day a new guy started to turn up and hang out with our group. For the sake of the story, I'll call him John. John was 2 years older than me, and when I first met him, I thought he was a little weird, but everyone in our group got on with him. He was good friends with someone we went to school with, so I didn't think on it too much, and just tried to get to know him. He told me where about he lived, and what he was studying at college, and a little bit about his family and interests. I probed him a little bit further. This is where things began to get a bit strange. Bearing in mind that I had just met him that day, he began to get all excited and told me how his father was a vampire and his mom was impregnated by him, using that exact word, which unsettled me. He said jokingly, but looking back on it, it's a tad frightening. that I should be worried about him because he's half a vampire, and he'd be coming for me in the night, and kicked over a metal bin. Safe to say, I thought he was a downright weirdo, but I didn't go out of my way to be mean to him or ignore him. He seemed nice enough and friendly, and he never presented himself as anything but an ordinary guy. My best friend Maisie was a really flirtatious in her personality, and John took to her really quickly after he met her. He used to go on walks, and if we found interesting abandoned places, we'd go play manhunt or something, and every time we did this, he would actually try to find Macy instead of anyone else. She hated this because she already dated someone and knew that he was trying to get her attention, so she flat out told him that she wasn't interested in him. Soon he stopped even talking to her. I guess out of pity, I began to be kinder to him. I saw that the tides were turning in our friendship group, and people were beginning to talk badly on him because Macy was really popular and well liked in the group, and even though she hadn't told anyone to act differently. The fact that he unnerved her and upset her set people out against him. So actively, I tried to be nicer to him. I knew what it felt like to feel outcasted, and I wanted him not to feel left out. This was something I would come to soon regret. We began talking most nights, and we would video chat every other night because he said he was feeling lonely, or he just wanted to see my cute little face. I never thought too much of his comments because I just thought they were compliments. At the time, I never really thought too much on the things guys said about me, or to me as I was busy studying for my GCSEs, and those were constantly on my mind. He would offer to help me study, even though he knew nothing on the things that I was studying. I thought it was sweet, but I always studied better alone, so I'd always tell him no. He would insist, but again, I would tell him no. Soon things escalated, and he started turning up outside my school to try and see me. When I would get upset, he'd pass it off as he was actually there to see someone else. But he would always open with, he was there for me. Some of my school friends began getting involved. They'd say that they were concerned, and that he seemed like a creeper, and that he was too old to be hanging around our school gates. Even our head teacher came out once, and yelled at him for loitering around the school's property. It was so humiliating. However, things actually came to a head around April. It was my 16th birthday. He was 18 soon, to be 19 by the way. And I was at home getting ready to go out and meet my friends to go to the cinema. My dad was at work, and my mom was out doing the shopping, and it was just me in the house when there was a knock on the door. I knew it couldn't have been my parents because they both had keys, and my brothers were still all at school, so I presumed it was going to be my friends and their parents to come pick me up and take me to the cinema. So imagine my surprise when I opened the door, and John stood there with a present tucked under his arm. He greeted me happily and pushed the gift into my hands and said it was my birthday gift. I was really confused, as I hadn't told him it was my birthday. And what's more, I had never given him my address. While I assumed at the time one of my friends had given him my address, it later came out that no one had actually given him my address. He didn't say much else, and then walked off, hands in his pockets, and I shut and locked the door. The messaging and calling started. It worsened when he began texting me. Once again, I had never given him my phone number, and no one admitted to giving it to him. One of my school friends joked that he was stalking me, and maybe she should have bought me a knife for my birthday. We laughed it off, but looking back on it, I don't think it was a genuine laughter. After a few more incidents here and there, I stopped talking to him. He messaged me constantly, but I never replied, and one day he just stopped messaging me altogether. I was relieved, and I was able to continue with my life and studies, and I vaguely fell back into my moral routine with no worry that he would just turn up. I had a friend, Katie, who had only joined the group about a month before. She was 13 and went to a local school. She was really lovely, and she's one of my closest friends, even though I'd only known her a month. One day she confided in me that John had now begun harassing her, that he messaged her constantly. He surprised her with unannounced visits to her house in the early morning. She had never given him the address either. and she had confided in me that he had tried to assault her in his house after giving her alcohol. I was horrified and felt my blood run cold. But like me, she grew up in a very strict household, and her mom was a strict Orthodox Christian, and she feared her mom wouldn't believe her, so we kept it to ourselves. She had a boyfriend, and she couldn't even tell him, fearing that he was going to try and hurt John or do something that would get himself in trouble. So I never told anyone. All in all, it was a very tough situation. John hated that she was with someone else, and though he'd turn his affections away from me, I still felt involved and tried hard to keep Katie away from him. One night in about October, our group decided to go camping. At this point, there was a consensus to not invite John to this thing, and he had slowly dissolved from our friendship group. We were camping a few towns out from ours in a field next to a Boy Scout club, so we felt safe enough. It was a really cold night, and we didn't have enough blankets, so me, Katie, and another 2 people shared a tent and huddled together to keep warm when we went to bed. At about 4 a.m., I woke up to go to the toilet. I could hear rustling outside, and presumed it to be a fox or the wind, and headed out to brave the gross weather. I sat down in the bushes to pee when I heard the unmistakable break of a branch, and looked over to where I heard the noise from. It was John. He saw me, and I saw him, and I literally couldn't believe he was there. He looked like a serial killer, half shrouded in the bushes, and his eyes gleaming in the moonlight. After about 5 seconds of staring, he just walked in the other direction into the tree line. I stumbled back to the tent in shock, and didn't breathe until the tent was fully zipped up again. I cried quietly for an hour before I fell asleep again. The next morning, I asked if anyone had invited him, or if he even knew where we were. It was a closed group chat, and none of us told anyone where we were going, meaning he had to have followed us from the train station to this area. Who knows how long he was there? People thought I was dreaming, but I wasn't. It was him, clear as day, and I will never ever forget the bored and plain look on his face as he turned and walked away, like I didn't even see him. After this incident, he never messaged any of us again. I never saw him again. He was like a ghost who existed in my life for about 9 to 10 months. We spoke about him and the fact he was so weird, but we never invited him to hang again. Some of my friends at the time didn't even believe that any of this happened. Though me and Katie don't talk much, it's still something that she doesn't even like mentioning to this day. Even just his name being mentioned upsets her. I don't even know what happened to him, but I call him my casual stalker, because his stalking of me wasn't nearly as severe as Katie. She told me he'd just walk and follow behind her sometimes after the camping incident, but I never saw him again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.